Dad told me, your brother is entitled to the family business, you simply don't have what it takes. I agreed entirely. What I held instead was the patent rights to everything the business sold. Funny how fast I developed what it takes. I thought my family would always have my back. I was wrong. The day my father told me I wasn't good enough, I decided to take back everything they'd built on my name, and in doing so, I tore it all down. The conference room smelled of old leather and my father's cologne. Across the mahogany table, his fingers drummed a rhythm I knew too well, a silent countdown to a decision that would unravel everything. My brother, Daniel, leaned back in his chair with that familiar smirk, the one he'd perfected since we were kids fighting over the last slice of pizza. "This isn't personal, Michael," my father said, which of course meant it absolutely was. "Daniel has the vision this company needs. You're brilliant with the technical side. Always have been. But running Morrison Industries requires a different skill set." I just nodded slowly, keeping my face perfectly neutral. My mother, Sarah, had taught me poker when I was 12, and that lesson stuck: never let them see what you're holding. The board agrees. Michael continued, sliding a folder across the table. "Daniel will take over as CEO when I retire next month. You'll remain as head of research and development. Of course, your work is valuable. Valuable enough to keep, but clearly not valuable enough to lead." The math was painfully simple. Daniel finally spoke up, a condescending edge to his voice. "Look, sis, you know I've always had the people skills. Dad's right about vision. You get lost in your prototypes and formulas. Nothing wrong with that, but somebody needs to see the big picture." The big picture. For 20 years, I'd been designing every product Morrison Industries sold. Our flagship line of industrial filtration systems? Mine. The breakthrough water purification technology that tripled our revenue 5 years ago? Also mine. The 17 patents currently generating licensing fees from competitors across 3 continents? Every single one came from my lab. But Daniel had the people skills. "I understand," I said quietly. Michael's shoulders visibly relaxed. He'd expected a fight, probably prepared for tears or anger. My compliance caught him off guard. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this," he said. "Family comes first. Always has, always will." I signed the documents he pushed toward me, acknowledgments that I understood the transition plan and accepted my continuing role. My hand stayed perfectly steady as I wrote my name. That night, alone in my apartment, I reviewed every patent filed under the Morrison Industries name. My name appeared as the sole inventor on 43 of them. Daniel's name appeared on exactly 0. Michael had contributed to 2 early designs before his focus shifted entirely to management and sales. Here's what most people don't understand about intellectual property: the company name on the patent doesn't tell the whole story. The named inventor retains certain rights, particularly when employment contracts contain specific language, or more importantly, when they don't. My employment contract, signed when I was 22 and fresh out of Stanford, was remarkably sparse. Michael had insisted we didn't need complicated legal documents between family members. Trust mattered more than paperwork, he'd said. Sarah had drafted it herself, just a simple 2-page agreement outlining my salary and basic responsibilities. Nowhere did it mention patent assignment. Around midnight, I called my college roommate, Chloe. She'd gone to law school after we graduated, specialized in intellectual property, and now worked for one of Austin's top firms. "Please tell me you're finally dating again," she answered, her voice sleepy. "It's Saturday night. I need legal advice, professional consultation." Her tone shifted immediately. "What's going on?" I explained the situation, then sent her photographs of my employment contract and 3 sample patents. She called back within an hour. "Your father's attorney screwed up," she said bluntly. "Or your mother did, depending on perspective." Without explicit patent assignment clauses, you own joint rights to these inventions. Morrison Industries has rights too, based on the work-for-hire doctrine, but so do you. You can license these patents independently. All of them. Every single one where you're listed as sole inventor. I'd need to review the full portfolio, but from what you sent me, you're sitting on a gold mine. These filtration systems alone generate millions in licensing fees annually. I thought about Daniel's smirk, Michael's casual dismissal, the decades of being useful but not essential. What would you charge to review everything for me? Let's call it professional courtesy with a payment plan. Send me the complete patent documentation Monday morning. Sunday dinner had been a family tradition since I was born. Sarah's pot roast. Michael's terrible jokes. Daniel bringing his wife Brianna and their 2 kids. Everyone gathered around the same table where I'd learned to write out my father's lectures and my brother's needling. I arrived early, helping Sarah in the kitchen while she talked about her garden and the neighbor's new fence. She asked about work with genuine interest, the way she always had. Michael gave Daniel the company, I said, chopping carrots. Her knife paused mid-slice through an onion. I heard. How do you feel about it? Honestly, relieved. I wasn't lying. The weight I'd been carrying, trying to prove myself worthy of something I never truly wanted, had lifted. Running the company means board meetings and investor calls. I'd rather be in the lab. Your father thinks he's doing what's best. She resumed chopping, but her movements were mechanical. Did you review my employment contract before I signed it? The question came out casually, just curiosity between family. Of course. I drafted it myself. Your father wanted something simple, something that reflected trust rather than suspicion. She glanced at me. Why? Just wondering about the details. It's been 15 years. Over dinner, Daniel outlined his plans for Morrison Industries with the enthusiasm of someone who had been mentally redecorating his future office for months. Expansion into Asian markets, partnerships with 3 major corporations, a rebranding initiative that would bring us into the modern era. What about R&D? I asked. Any plans there? Well, obviously you'll keep doing what you do best, Daniel said. Though, I'm thinking we might outsource some of the more routine development work. Cut costs, improve efficiency. Michael nodded approvingly. Brianna looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. The kids played games on their tablets, oblivious. Outsourcing, I repeated, interesting approach. Nothing against your work, Daniel added quickly. But let's be honest, once the core technology exists, refinements and variations don't require your level of expertise. We can hire cheaper talent for that. Cheaper talent. I took a bite of pot roast and let the conversation flow around me. Chloe's full analysis arrived Wednesday afternoon. A 40-page document that read like a treasure map. Of my 43 sole inventor patents, 41 contain no assignment language that would give Morrison Industries exclusive rights. The 2 exceptions were early designs where Michael had insisted on explicit company ownership before Sarah convinced him that such formality was unnecessary within family. The licensing potential, conservatively estimated, exceeded $8 million annually. Morrison Industries currently collected those fees and reported them as company revenue, but I had equal claim to negotiate my own licensing arrangements. Here's the beautiful part, Chloe explained over the phone. You're not stealing anything. You're not violating any agreements. You're simply exercising rights you've always possessed but never knew you had. Legally, Morrison Industries will retain their rights to use the patents for their own products. They just won't have exclusive control over who else gets to use them. What happens when I start licensing independently? They'll panic. Their competitive advantage disappears the moment their rivals can access the same technology legally. The licensing fees Morrison currently collects will be split with you, or potentially redirected entirely to you if you negotiate better terms with licensees. the company's valuation will drop significantly. How significantly? She paused. Given that these patents represent the foundation of their entire product line, I'd estimate a 40 to 60% reduction in company value, maybe more. Daniel's first day as CEO was scheduled for the first Monday in October. I waited until the preceding Friday afternoon to file the first licensing agreement. A French manufacturing firm had been trying to license our water purification technology for years. I offered them terms Morrison had repeatedly refused: lower fees, broader usage rights, and immediate access. They signed within 3 hours. By Monday morning, I'd executed 4 more licensing deals with companies in South Korea, Australia, Mexico, and Argentina. Each contract was completely legal, properly structured, and absolutely devastating to Morrison Industries' competitive position. Daniel called me at 7:30 a.m. What the hell did you do? I exercised my patent rights. Is there a problem? Our lawyers are saying you can't do this. Those patents belong to the company. Actually, the patents list me as sole inventor. I'd suggest your lawyers review the employment contract I signed. The one Michael insisted should be simple and trust-based. Silence stretched across the line. Then, we'll sue you. For what? Exercising legal rights to my own inventions? Good luck with that. I've already had my attorney review everything thoroughly. But please, waste company resources on litigation. You'll lose. Makes my next steps easier. What next steps? I hung up. The emergency board meeting happened Wednesday. I wasn't invited, but Sarah called me afterward. She sounded exhausted. Your father's having chest pains. The doctor says it's stress, not his heart. But still, what are you trying to accomplish? I'm accomplishing exactly what I set out to do. Daniel wanted to run the company. He can run it without destroying it first. I'm not destroying anything. I'm competing. Isn't that what Michael always taught us? Competition makes everyone stronger. I softened my voice. Sarah, do you remember telling me that I'd need to fight for respect in this family? That being right wasn't enough? This isn't what I meant. Maybe not, but it's what I learned. The industry news sites picked up the story by Thursday. Morrison Industries' stock price, traded publicly since Michael took the company through an IPO in 2008, dropped 18% in a single day. Analysts questioned the company's future without exclusive access to the technology that had defined their success. Daniel held the press conference announcing that Morrison Industries would develop new proprietary technology to replace the licensed systems. He looked confident on camera, every bit the capable leader Michael had envisioned. I filed 7 more licensing agreements that afternoon. Michael showed up at my apartment Saturday morning, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I made coffee while he sat at my kitchen table, the same way he used to sit when I was in high school and needed help with calculus homework. I'm asking you to stop, he said finally. Not as your employer, as your father. You fired me yesterday, remember? Daniel sent the termination email. Eliminating my position to cut costs. That wasn't supposed to happen. He panicked. The board is demanding action. Shareholders are threatening lawsuits. He's trying to stop the bleeding. I sat down across from him with 2 mugs. You told me I didn't have what it takes to run the company. Turns out I don't need to run it. I just need to own the technology it depends on. This will destroy everything I built. You built it on my inventions. You just never thought I'd realize that. His hand shook slightly around the mug. What do you want? Money? We can negotiate a settlement. Bring you back at a higher salary, different title. Whatever makes this right. I don't want to come back. I've already accepted a position at Brennan Technologies. They're giving me my own research division, full control over patent rights for anything I develop, and a compensation package that reflects my actual value. I paused. They're also very interested in licensing the patents I control. Exclusive licenses, even, for certain applications. That would shut us out completely. Yes, it would. Michael's face went through several expressions, landing somewhere between fury and inspiration. Your brother has a family. Brianna just quit her job. The kids are in private school. If the company collapses, then Daniel will need to find employment elsewhere, just like I did. I hear there's demand for people with vision and people skills. You're being cruel. I'm being rational. Business isn't personal, remember? That's what you always said. He left without finishing his coffee. Sarah called that evening, crying, begging me to reconsider. I listened until she ran out of words, then gently ended the call. The counteroffer arrived via Morrison Industries' legal team on Tuesday. $7 million for exclusive rights to all patents I controlled, plus a consulting agreement worth $200,000 annually for the next 10 years. It was a substantial offer, the kind that would secure my financial future permanently. I declined within an hour and licensed the crown jewel of my portfolio, the advanced filtration system that generated 40% of Morrison's revenue, to their primary competitor for a fraction of the usual fee. The competitor would manufacture and sell directly to Morrison's largest clients, undercutting prices by 30%. Chloe called that night. You know, you could have taken their offer. $7 million is nothing to sneeze at. This isn't about money anymore. What's it about then? I thought about that. Respect, maybe. Acknowledgement, proving that what they considered merely valuable was actually indispensable. Revenge? That, too. The shareholder lawsuit against the Morrison Industries board came the following Monday, alleging gross mismanagement and failure to secure essential intellectual property rights. Michael and Daniel both faced depositions. The company's stock price had fallen 43% from its pre-announcement high. Daniel's deposition transcript arrived through Chloe's connections. Reading it felt like watching someone drown in real time. He tried to claim oversight of my technical work, suggesting he'd contributed strategic direction to the patents. The opposing counsel had been merciless. Mr. Morrison, can you explain the chemical process underlying patent US 10,234,567? I didn't personally develop the formulas, but I understood the business applications. So you cannot explain the technology you claim to have overseen? My role was management level. The technical details were handled by my sister. The sister whose employment contract contained no patent assignment provisions? The questions continued for 6 hours. Daniel had no answers that didn't make the board's negligence more obvious. Michael's deposition had gone similarly, filled with assumptions about family loyalty and trust that sounded naive when spoken aloud in the legal proceeding. My own deposition came 2 weeks later. I prepared extensively with Chloe, anticipating every angle Morrison's attorneys might pursue. They tried to argue implied patent assignment, that family employment created different expectations than standard corporate relationships. Did your father ever explicitly state that patents developed during your employment belonged to Morrison Industries? Their lead attorney asked. Never in writing. Verbally, he expressed pride in our technology, but ownership was never discussed with legal specificity. You knew these patents were valuable to the company. Of course, that's why I expected fair compensation and recognition for creating them. Neither materialized in meaningful ways. So, this is retaliation for perceived slights? This is exercising legal rights I possess since the patents were filed. If Morrison Industries structured employment agreements that failed to secure those rights, that represents their error, not my misconduct. The attorney shifted tactics repeatedly, trying to paint me as vindictive or ungrateful. Each attempt failed against the documented reality. I'd done exactly what my contract permitted, nothing more or less. After the deposition, Chloe and I grabbed coffee at a shop near her office. She looked satisfied in the way lawyers do when proceedings go exactly as planned. "You are perfect in there," she said. "Cold, factual, unshakable. They have nothing. How bad is it for them? The shareholders will likely win their suit. The board failed in their fiduciary duty by not securing patent rights from a key employee. That's textbook mismanagement. Your father and Daniel might face personal liability." The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow. Personal liability means what, exactly? Potentially significant financial damages. If the shareholders can prove the board's negligence directly caused the company's devaluation, individual board members could be on the hook for millions. Michael had retirement savings, investments, the house he'd lived in for 30 years. Daniel had already lost so much. The prospect of financial ruin added to their other losses felt excessive, even to me. Could I do anything to mitigate that? I asked. Chloe studied me carefully. You could offer testimony supporting the board's decision-making, argue that the patent situation was a reasonable oversight given family dynamics. It might reduce damages. Would it help them significantly? Possibly. But why would you? They certainly never helped you. I didn't have a good answer. Revenge had seemed straightforward when it was abstract. When dismantling the company felt like claiming what I deserved. Watching real people face real consequences complicated the emotional calculus. "Let me think about it," I said. That night, I drafted an email to Michael 3 different times, each version attempting to explain my conflicted feelings. All 3 ended up deleted. Some conversations can't happen productively over email, and I wasn't ready for them to happen face to face. My new position at Brennan Technologies started quietly. They gave me a research facility in Palo Alto, a team of 12 talented engineers, and complete autonomy over project selection. The first thing I developed was an improved version of the filtration technology one created for Morrison, incorporating refinements I'd been considering for months. The team I inherited was cautiously optimistic about my leadership. Word had spread in industry circles about the Morrison situation, and opinions divided sharply. Some saw me as a brilliant technologist protecting her rights. Others viewed me as the daughter who destroyed her family's legacy over money and ego. My lead engineer, a talented woman named Maya, who'd worked in water treatment technology for 15 years, asked me directly during our first one-on-one meeting. "I need to know what kind of boss you're going to be," she said. "The stories going around paint very different pictures. What stories concern you most? That you're ruthless, that loyalty means nothing to you, that you'll turn on anyone who doesn't serve your interests." She met my eyes steadily. "I've got 3 kids and a mortgage. I need stability, not drama." Fair concerns, honestly expressed. I respected that. "Here's what I can tell you, I value competence, honesty, and innovation. I will never take credit for work that isn't mine, and I will always ensure people are compensated fairly for their contributions." What happened with Morrison Industries happened because those principles were violated repeatedly over many years. If you do good work here, I'll fight for your recognition and advancement. And if I disagree with you on something technical, then we'll examine the data together and figure out who's right. I'm not infallible. I'm just experienced and careful. Maya seemed satisfied with that answer. Over the following weeks, she proved to be exactly the kind of colleague I'd been missing at Morrison. Someone who challenged assumptions, pushed for better solutions, and cared deeply about the quality of our work. The rest of the team gradually warmed up as they realized I meant what I'd said. I made a point of acknowledging contributions in meetings, ensuring credit went to the right people, and involving everyone in decision-making processes. Leadership, I discovered, wasn't particularly mysterious when you treated people with basic respect. We made significant progress on the improved filtration system by mid-November. The design incorporated nanomaterial filters that increased efficiency by 37% while reducing manufacturing costs. Maya had suggested the nanomaterial approach. I'd figured out how to make it practically achievable at scale. During a team meeting to review the prototype results, one of the younger engineers asked the question everyone had probably been wondering. Will Morrison Industries try to claim this technology is derivative of your previous work for them? They might try, I said. But this uses completely different materials and processes. The underlying principles are similar because physics doesn't change, but the implementation is entirely novel. Our patent attorneys have already reviewed everything for potential conflicts. Still must be weird competing against your own family. It was weird working for family who didn't value my contributions. This is just business. The comment ended the discussion, but I thought about it later that evening. Was I competing against my family, or were they simply existing in the same industry where I'd finally claimed appropriate space? The distinction mattered less than it once would have. Brennan's patent attorneys ensured every detail of ownership was crystal clear this time. Meanwhile, Morrison Industries continued its decline. A trade publication ran a feature article about the company's fall, interviewing industry analysts and former employees. One analyst described it as a cautionary tale about family businesses failing to formalize critical relationships. A former colleague named Ethan, someone I'd worked alongside for 5 years in the R&D department, gave an interview that surprised me. Everyone knew she was the brains behind the technology, he said. We joked about it sometimes, how Daniel would take credit in investor presentations for systems he couldn't begin to explain. Management treated her like a particularly useful piece of equipment. They genuinely seemed shocked when the equipment decided it had rights. The article quoted Daniel's response, "Family businesses operate on trust and shared vision. When someone prioritizes personal gain over collective success, everyone suffers." Personal gain. As if claiming ownership of my own inventions was greed rather than basic fairness. I sent Ethan a thank you email for his honest comments. He responded immediately, just telling the truth. Most of us in R&D thought you got screwed long before this blew up. For what it's worth, I'm glad you landed on your feet. His message reminded me that not everyone at Morrison had been complicit in my marginalization. The engineers and technicians I'd worked with directly had generally respected my expertise. The problem had always been higher up in leadership that valued pedigree over performance. By November, Morrison Industries had laid off 30% of their workforce. Daniel appeared in a New York Times article about family businesses struggling with succession. His confident demeanor replaced by visible strain. The article mentioned me only briefly, the daughter whose overlooked patent rights had triggered the company's collapse. Brianna filed for divorce in December. Sarah mentioned it during one of our occasional phone conversations, her voice carefully neutral. Daniel's moved back home, she said. Until he gets back on his feet. How's Michael handling it? He's aging fast. The stress has been significant. He barely goes into the office anymore. A pause stretched between us, filled with things neither of us knew how to say. Brianna's attorney is going after everything, Sarah continued. The house, Daniel's retirement accounts, even claiming he misrepresented his financial stability when they made major purchases last year. She's not being particularly charitable about the situation. Can you blame her? He promised her a CEO lifestyle and delivered unemployment. You sound almost pleased about it. The accusation stung because it held some truth. I'm not pleased, but I'm not sympathetic either. Daniel made choices. So did Brianna when she married someone coasting on family connections. Consequences exist. These are real people suffering real losses. Your nephew and niece are living through their parents' divorce, their grandfather's health problems, their father's professional disgrace. Does none of that matter to you? I thought about Daniel's kids, teenagers who had grown up with private school educations and summer houses, now facing a very different reality. They hadn't chosen their father's arrogance or their grandfather's dismissiveness. It matters, I said quietly. But what was I supposed to do? Keep producing technology for free while being told I wasn't good enough to lead? Expect that my work only mattered when it was convenient for them? You could have tried talking to them. Negotiated. Given them a chance to make things right before you destroyed everything. I gave them 15 years, Sarah. 15 years of producing industry-leading innovations while being treated as useful but not essential. When exactly during that time should I have demanded respect? When would they have listened? She didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I, really? The question haunted me more than I wanted to admit. Christmas dinner was predictably awkward. Daniel couldn't look at me. Michael spoke in clipped sentences. Only Sarah made an effort at normalcy, discussing her plans for spring planting as if we were any normal family gathering for the holidays. Daniel's kids were absent, spending the holiday with Brianna's parents. Their absence felt like an accusation, a visible reminder of fracture spreading through generations. The meal itself was Sarah's usual perfect execution. Roast turkey with herb butter, mashed potatoes, her famous cranberry sauce with orange zest. Food had always been her love language. The way she tried to hold a family together through shared meals and traditions. But you can't feed your way through this kind of damage. The company's exploring a sale, Daniel said suddenly, midway through dessert. Private equity firm out of Atlanta. They keep the Morrison name but restructure everything. That's probably wise, I said. Wise? He laughed bitterly. You systematically dismantled everything Michael spent 40 years building, and you think it's wise that we're selling the wreckage? I dismantled nothing. I simply stopped providing free access to my intellectual property. The fact that the company couldn't survive without that free access isn't my problem. We're a family. Exactly. And family doesn't tell someone they lack what it takes while building an empire on their work. I set down my fork. You wanted to lead. Here's leadership, dealing with problems you didn't create. Making decisions without easy answers. Accepting responsibility for outcomes you can't control. How's that going? He left the table. Brianna's name came up again. The kids, the house he'd have to sell. Michael sat in silence, not defending his son, not defending himself. Sarah walked me to my car afterward. Are you satisfied now? Satisfied isn't the right word. Resolved, maybe. Your father is broken. Daniel is broken. The company that was supposed to be your grandfather's legacy is being sold to strangers. Grandpa Morrison died when I was 6. I barely remember him. The legacy everyone keeps talking about was built on technology one created. If it dies because they couldn't value the person creating it, that's not a tragedy. That's justice. She hugged me tightly, and I realized she was the only one who had never dismissed my capabilities, never suggested I was less than my brother. I love you, she said. Even when I don't understand you. I know. The private equity sale went through in February. Morrison Industries became a subsidiary of Consolidated Manufacturing Group. Daniel received a modest severance package, and Michael retired with his reputation damaged, but his finances intact. The Morrison name still existed on products, but the family involvement ended. The final sale price was $62 million, a fraction of the company's peak valuation of $230 million just 6 months earlier. Shareholders took significant losses. The private equity firm had negotiated aggressively, knowing Morrison's weakened position gave them leverage. I read the announcement in the New York Times over coffee at my favorite Palo Alto cafe. The article included a photo of Michael and Daniel at the signing ceremony, both looking exhausted and diminished. Michael's signature on the sale documents represented 40 years of work reduced to a transaction that satisfied nobody. Part of me expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. The barista, a grad student named David Clark, who'd served me coffee dozens of times, noticed the paper. That's Morrison Industries, right? Weren't you connected to them? My family owned it. Past tense now, apparently. Must be weird seeing that. You okay? His genuine concern caught me off guard. Honestly, I'm not sure. It's complicated. Family stuff usually is. He refilled my coffee without charging. For what it's worth, you seem like you're doing all right for yourself. Sometimes that's enough. Simple wisdom from an unexpected source. Sometimes that's enough. Chloe called later that day with an update on the shareholder lawsuit. They've reached a settlement. Your father and the board will pay out $12 million collectively. Your father's portion is roughly $4 million. $4 million. Not enough to bankrupt him, but enough to seriously impact his retirement. How's he covering it? Combination of insurance, personal assets, and a payment plan. He'll be fine financially, but it's going to hurt. And Daniel, his board position was relatively recent, so his exposure is limited. Maybe $500,000. Still significant given his current situation. I thanked her for the information and ended the call. The apartment felt too quiet, suddenly too empty. I'd won every battle, claimed every right, proven every point. The victory tasted like ashes. My work at Brennan Technologies flourished. We developed 3 new patents in my first 6 months, each properly assigned with fair compensation structures. My team respected my expertise because I'd proven it, not because of family connections or assumed authority. One afternoon in late March, Maya knocked on my office door holding a printout of test results. Her expression told me the news was good before she spoke. The nanomaterial filters are exceeding projections by 43%, she said, barely containing her excitement. We're seeing efficiency levels I didn't think were possible with current manufacturing technology. I reviewed the data carefully, checking for errors or anomalies. Everything looked legitimate. This is remarkable work, Maya. Your nanomaterial suggestion was a key. Your implementation made it possible. We both know these materials have been theoretically viable for years, but nobody figured out how to make them work at scale until you designed this configuration. Then we both deserve credit. I made a note to ensure her name appeared prominently on the patent application. Let's schedule a presentation for the executive team. This could be a major product line. After she left, I sat looking at the test results and feeling something I hadn't experienced much at Morrison. Genuine collaborative pride. We built something together, and everyone involved would receive appropriate recognition. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Daniel's son, Liam. Got your number from Grandma. Can we talk? I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. Of course, call anytime. He called within 5 minutes, his teenage voice uncertain but determined. I'm not sure this is appropriate, reaching out like this. Dad doesn't know I'm calling. What's on your mind, Liam? I'm trying to understand what happened with the company. Everyone has different versions, and I can't figure out who's telling the truth. Dad says you betrayed the family. Grandma says it's more complicated. Grandpa won't talk about it at all. How do you explain years of accumulated dismissal to a kid who's watching his family implode? What matters most to you about understanding it? I guess I want to know if you're the villain everyone says you are. His bluntness was refreshing. I'm not a villain, but I'm probably not a hero either. I protected my legal rights after being told I wasn't good enough to lead a company built on technology one created. Your father and grandfather made choices that prioritized family hierarchy over fair recognition. I responded by exercising rights I'd always possessed but never knew about. So it's about revenge. It started as self-respect. What it became? That's harder to define. I paused, choosing words carefully. Liam, your father isn't a bad person. Neither is your grandfather. But they operated under assumptions about family and loyalty that didn't account for basic fairness. When those assumptions collided with legal reality, everything fell apart. Dad's really struggling. The divorce, losing his job, living with grandma and grandpa again. He talks about you like you're the source of everything wrong in his life. That's easier than accepting responsibility for his own choices. I understand the impulse. We talked for another 20 minutes. Liam asking careful questions about patents and business decisions. Me trying to be honest without completely destroying his image of his father. When we finally ended the call, I felt drained but oddly hopeful. Maybe the next generation could learn from their parents' mistakes. Daniel sent an email in March. We should talk. I deleted it without responding. Michael's email came in April. I'm sorry. 2 words that 15 years ago might have changed everything. I wrote a reply explaining exactly why it was too late, then deleted it. Some conversations don't need to happen. Sarah visited my new house in May, admiring the home office where I still sketched designs and ran calculations late into the night. She didn't mention the company or my brother. We talked about her garden, my work, the neighbor's friendly cat who had adopted my porch. Are you happy? She asked before leaving. I considered the question honestly. The satisfaction of proving them wrong had faded, replaced by something quieter and more sustainable. Contentment in work I controlled, in recognition I'd earned without qualification. Yes, I said. I genuinely am. Then I suppose it was worth it. Was it worth it for you, watching the family fracture? She smiled sadly. I raised a daughter strong enough to demand respect and smart enough to claim what was rightfully hers. That's worth something, too. After she left, I sat in my office reviewing the latest patent application. Brennan wanted to license it to Morrison's old competitor, the one that had benefited most from my previous licensing arrangements. The irony was notable. I approved the deal. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things unfolded, if I wish I'd handled the situation differently. The question implies there was a version of events where everyone stayed happy, where I could have stood up for myself without consequences rippling through the family structure. That version never existed. My father had made his choice years before the conference room meeting. Every time he praised Daniel's potential while treating my achievements as expected output. Daniel had made his choice by accepting leadership of a company built on technology he'd never bothered to understand. They both made the choice to see me as valuable but not essential, useful but not worthy of leading. I'd simply held up a mirror. The company survived in diminished form under corporate ownership. Daniel found work managing operations for a mid-size manufacturing firm in Florida, a position that paid adequately but lacked prestige. Michael volunteered at a community center and avoided industry events where former colleagues might ask awkward questions. My relationship with them remained distant but cordial. Birthday cards arrived punctually. Holiday dinners happened when I felt inclined to attend. We existed in each other's lives without the illusion of closeness that had masked years of dismissal and undervaluation. Brennan Technologies promoted me to Chief Technology Officer after 18 months. My patents generated revenue streams that funded expansion into 3 new markets. Industry publications ran profiles discussing my innovative work and rapid rise. None of the articles mentioned Morrison Industries. That part of my history had become a footnote, interesting primarily for what came after. I dated a patent attorney named Noah who understood intellectual property law and thought my handling of the Morrison situation was professionally brilliant, if personally complicated. We argued about it sometimes, his idealism clashing with my pragmatism, but the discussion stayed respectful. Life moved forward the way it does when you've burned a bridge and discovered you don't actually need it. The other side remains visible. People you once knew going about their business, but the connection has severed permanently. No tragedy exists in that separation, just acceptance of incompatible values. Daniel's younger son called me last month, a teenager now, asking about engineering programs at Stanford. I spent an hour on the phone discussing my experiences, offering advice about the application process, promising to write a recommendation letter. "Dad says you're really successful now," he said hesitantly. He doesn't talk about what happened with Grandpa's company, but I looked it up online. "What did you find?" "Lots of articles about patent rights and family businesses. Some said you destroyed everything. Others said you protected your intellectual property. I'm not sure what to believe." "Both things are true," I told him. "Perspective determines which truth matters more." "Which one matters to you?" I thought about that conference room, my father's dismissal, Daniel's smirk. Then I thought about my office at Brennan, the patents bearing my name with proper compensation structures, the respect I'd earned rather than fought for. I protected what was mine. Everything else was their choice. He seemed satisfied with that answer. We talked more about Stanford, about research opportunities and internship programs. When we hung up, I realized I felt no anger toward the kid, no resentment about his father or grandfather. That particular fire had burned out, leaving only ashes and the understanding that sometimes the only way forward requires scorching everything behind you. Chloe called that evening with news of a potential patent infringement case. Some startup had been using technology too similar to my designs, likely assuming they could get away with borrowing concepts from innovations several years old. "How do you want to handle it?" she asked. "Aggressively," I said without hesitation. "Document everything, send the cease and desist, prepare for litigation if necessary." "You've gotten ruthless." "No, I've gotten clear about protecting what I've created." "There's a difference." She laughed. "If you say so." Maybe ruthless was accurate. Maybe the experience with Morrison Industries had hardened something in me that used to bend. But I'd learned an essential lesson about value and recognition, about waiting for others to acknowledge your worth versus claiming it yourself. Michael had said I didn't have what it takes. He was right in a sense. I didn't have his willingness to value family loyalty over merit, his casual dismissal of contributions that didn't fit his vision for succession. I didn't have Daniel's comfort with taking credit for work he didn't do. What I had instead were the patents, the technology, the proven capability to innovate and create value from nothing but knowledge and determination. Turned out that's exactly what it takes. The sunset through my office window painted the room in shades of amber and gold. I pulled up the latest design specifications, technical drawings for a filtration system that would improve efficiency by 23% over current industry standards. My team would review it tomorrow, offer suggestions, help refine the concept into something remarkable. At Morrison Industries, this work would have been company property by default. My name mentioned in passing, if acknowledged at all. Here, proper contracts ensured fair compensation and recognition. The difference between being useful and being valued. My phone buzzed with a text from Noah suggesting dinner. I accepted, saved my work, and locked the office. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new designs, new opportunities to prove my capabilities. Tonight, I'd enjoy the life I'd built from the wreckage of their expectations. My father had said I lacked what it takes to run the family business. Standing in the ruins of that business, having claimed everything that mattered, I finally understood he'd been measuring the wrong things all along. Leadership wasn't about vision or people skills or family loyalty. Those mattered, certainly, but they meant nothing without the foundation they'd been taking for granted. I was the foundation, and when they tried to build without me, everything collapsed exactly as it should have. Funny how quickly I developed what it takes once they bothered to pay attention. What would you have done?